today on the Kyuranger Idiocy Report, because it seems like that's what's happening throughout this series for me. It's just a long series of people doing stupid things in the name of... I don't even know at this point. I really don't like this series. You've got one more episode, and I'm out. I'm out. Because, this week was focused on getting Raptor 278, aka Raptor Tsubasa, aka Raptor Wing, her Kyutama and Kyuranger powers. And, there's kind of a nice, except it's very childish, setup of her wanting to be a hero. It's her, I don't want to say lifelong ambition, but she's an android, but the problem with this is she's an android. She's specifically made for support work, support skills. They insultingly refer to such as the pilot and secretary as if it's a derisive profession for those to be in, but we've had plenty of characters play support roles through the previous series that, while they might have wanted to be rangers, in getting that dream, they found it actually wasn't for them, or there were various other reasons not to. I liked what they did with swans in Kyuranger, and I feel that was what they were trying to do with this, except with someone that's a more girly girl instead of the series of badasses that Kyuranger had, but I digress. She nonetheless dreams of being a hero and fighting alongside everyone else. And that's a good thing. Until they get down to the nuance of it. Now, two other things I should comment on before I get to the thrust of why this episode is terrible for me is, twofold. First, not to offend anyone that likes overtime subs. I have no issue with overtime subs in and of themselves. I get that they prefer accessibility of a series versus rote accuracy, but there are times when they just intentionally do not translate lines correctly to create a localized joke. Kyuranger and a lot of their early stuff were filled with these. One that sticks in my mind was Kyuranger's first episode, where they changed Navi's dialogue to intentionally make a joke out of Legend of Zelda that wasn't originally in there. Hey, listen! You're not supposed to do that. And it seems that with Kyuranger, they've been going back to that. They actually dialed back on this and would only do it when there was a cultural joke that was an element in the show that wouldn't translate. It pops up occasionally with these shows, but this week, and I wrote down what the thing was that, as part of the lore expansion for the series in the episode, Sho, Rampo, and Raptor explain that the Kyuranger's energy for powering the Kyutama and the rest of their powers is finite. They don't explain why it is finite, but from this moment onwards, they're going to limit the number of people that deploy, and because otherwise they just waste the Kyutama energy, so the cost for it would be too high for everyone to be full on deployment at all times. This is smart. This allows them to reserve the energy from everybody deploying for essential periods. I'm very much crediting the show for thinking of this and, the size of the cast, making so that the people focused in the episode would trade out, so that would more facilitate character development for all of them. It's going to fail because, due to the Deus Ex Machina of Lucky's powers, he's always going to end up in the main group, and thus subverts actually telling a story with all of these other characters, as he will always be at the focus. As happens again this week, where even though they deploy with 5 people, plus Raptor go seeming as if she's going to go off do something else, he nonetheless becomes the main character of the introductory episode for the technically 9th, the 8th member of the main team, as Stinger hasn't joined up yet, but the 9th and final Kyuranger episode, introduction episode, and he's still at the forefront of it. So, good idea, bad execution, as you're not exactly letting all the other characters take focus. But the thing that ties back to why I think Overtime screwed this up is they made the explanation of why the cost is too high into a joke about the budgetary limitations of Toei right now. And fair enough, there are a lot of issues with Toei's management of these properties right now, where they more and more have to recycle suits that they already made because they have all these other projects going on that are trying to net them more money. And the problem with that is they're putting a lot of money into things that don't earn them money, and no money or efforts into things that are usually their cash cows. And sometimes the things that have been screwing over their properties is not having the budget at essential times, or resources when they needed them at essential times, that, from what results, entirely wrecks their story. We saw this with Ghost last year, where for a quarter of the show, they had almost no budget. Excuse me, I'm kind of sick right now. So it's a real thing that's happening right now. It's a real thing to joke about, and has been commentary by people in the fandom about this, but it's not in the episode. It is not in the episode. It is not in the dialogue in the episode that supplies the opportunity for this fourth wall breaking joke. It is the specific line that Shōrampo says is, the cost is too high. And then the next line of the episode explains why the cost is too high. And this is solely in reference to the Kusama energy and all of that. So, what the hell? Seriously, what the hell? I'm usually not this critical of Overtime because they are a good group, but they have these moments every now and then, and they seem to be collecting into Kyuranger for some reason. Second, we can now say goodbye to the series at all exploring the universe and actively fighting off Dark Matter's bases across the universe. I have this written down in a text document. I had to do a bunch of things before I did this vlog because I usually do these right after I watch the episodes. But they just came back to Earth. 3 episodes, and they're to Earth with the full team, close to the whole team, as the last member will be following them, and they're not going to leave it. I'm pretty damn certain they're not going to leave it. As they came back to Earth, and I highly doubt they're going to leave it now, because this was Super Sentai's chance to go out and do stuff in the universe, fighting monsters out in the universe, and eventually they would come back to Earth. We knew this was an inevitability. Earth is inevitably the place where the universe puts all its stuff. It's important to humans and stuff, but no one from the cast is from Earth. Absolutely no one. So what purpose does this little dirtball have in the grand scheme of things? Why is it so important to the shifting war against Dark Matter, who is trying to take over the universe in all its splendor? What is so important about this world that even the show says is a backwater dirt ball? Oh, well, they have an insane amount of planesium so it's required so much of their resources to be able to mine out for their war efforts. That's a legitimate reason for that, but that's not the reason they give for going to Earth in the first place. They just have Raptor walk in, set the coordinates for this planet, and then boom, they find that Dark Matter has heavily infested the place with dozens of the planesium collectors that was previously said to only require one to absorb all of what's in a planet. For them to require dozens of these things off of there, that means there's a lot of energy on this planet. And okay, you're planning this out. You're tying this into how Super Sentai has the last several years tried to make the Earth in and of itself a character that helps supply the power to all of these Sentai teams. We had it last year with Kyuranger. Kyuranger had it as what created the Judenshi and all that. Gosager had it a bit with Gosei Knights. There's a consistent themology of including the Earth as a rich, plentiful power source that allows its protectors the powers that they... the powers they need. That is good from a meta perspective, but they don't justify why they're suddenly going to this planet to then become its protectors. In fact, all you really did with this was do 3 episodes before you did Gokaiger's opening episode. You're pretty much just ripping off Gokaiger at this point. You have a ragtag group of empowered individuals who are powered by this other person who actually they don't even bother with Gokaiger's full lore for this. They just give them the powers and then just send them to Earth to be its protectors, because that is where Jarg Matter's forces have suddenly consolidated, because rich and plentiful power source. What did they need the Planesium for in the first place? What did they... Like, the Zangiak forces were simpler in that this was just a world conquest scheme. Sorry, not world conquest, galaxy-wide conquest scheme. Jarg Matter are using this Planesium for something, and we don't know why. So, admittedly, there is a further level to this with Jarg Matter than which were with Zangiak, who were just conquerors. But what point did the Kyuranger have to be here over anywhere else in the galaxy all of a sudden? That's just what I keep coming back to. Because you're abandoning this wondrous story potential to exploring all of these other places and things out in the universe. You have so much potential for fantasy and majesty and science fiction tropes, and you just made it into another Protect the Earth series. I wouldn't even be so mad if they weren't, if they didn't do it so early, if they didn't abandon that storytelling medium so quickly in all of this. As, you know, episode 10, I would have been tolerant of it, but this isn't even before they got the entire team together. This is with the final individual's introduction, and why is this place suddenly so much more important? I keep coming back to that, and past the Planesium, they're not giving it a reason why they're doing that. Yeah, that's my problem. They're doing this with the 4th episode, and this is... Power Rangers, when they did in space, would regularly go to and from Earth as they used it as a base of operations. They resupplied there. They fixed their spaceships, and some of the support mecha were stored in its in planetary orbit of it. So it made sense to use that as a stopgap before going out into the universe to save the universe from evil. I get that. And this is admittedly shortcutting Kyuranger to that point, but I seriously doubt they are going to go back out into space past this. So, you had the opportunity to do something Sentai had never done before, and you just made 3 episodes that predate how Gokaiger structured their story. I don't like that. I do not like that, as it's derivative of things Super Sentai has already done when they had the opportunity to just do something new. Which brings us into what really got me angry at this episode. And it, of course, has to do with Lucky. Lucky finds out... I shouldn't say just finds out, because Spada already knows about it, and about Raptor's wish to be a Kyuranger. But the problem with it is... this is the character conflict of the episode, in that everybody else doesn't want Raptor to join them in battle. Not because she's not a Kyuranger, but because if she gets hurt, that damage is permanent. They make this very clear in the episode. Any injury she receives in battle as an android, they cannot fix. She will be permanently and irreparably damaged, and that damage will take its toll, and she will die. They cannot back her up. They cannot replace any of her parts, any of her parts like Champ, and Champ was specifically made to be a combat robot. What's his name? Balance is synthetic life form. Who knows what they mean by that at this point. But Raptor specifically, if she receives damage in battle, they can't fix it. They can't fix her. Spada doesn't want that to happen to her because he seriously cares about her. This is clarified in a web video where they show that there's kind of a level of flirting between them. He is looking out for her best interests because she is defenseless out in battle, and despite her dream that it will destroy her if she goes through with it, even if she becomes a Kyuranger. Lucky says that she will die anyways if she has to abandon her dream. Let's break this down. There is a thematic relation with this to the Monster of the Week, and that it eats the dreams of its victims. Now, immediately my question becomes, this is a universe-conquering organization. They are going to have monsters out there with special powers, but your Monster of the Week eats the dreams of children. The fuck? Look, this works with demon-class monsters because they're demons. They relate to that kind of spirituality thing. It doesn't make sense for an alien creature to have that power because no way in hell will there be something that develops naturally out in the universe that eats the dreams of others to nourish itself. That's not going to happen. That's kind of the limitations of, space aliens. You can do it with magic. Create a monster made of magic, or originating from magic that has that kind of thing as its conceptual base. They are not limited by those means of development. Or, say, you have a monster that puts its victims to sleep and then drains their neural energy. That works, but that's not how they present all of that in this episode. It's specifically a monster that eats dreams and is one of the commanding monsters of the week for this intergalactic conquering organization. And thus, it comes in conflict with Lucky trying to get Raptor to fulfill her dream of becoming a superhero. And the monster sees how big this fantastical dream of hers is, and the thing is, you're confusing your definitions. You are confusing your definitions because the monster is based on a dream catcher, as in fantasies, delusions, dreams you think of when you are asleep. Raptor has those about her actual lifelong goal to be a superhero. Thus, the episode is presenting the idea that this grand dream of Raptor's to become a superhero is the same as a fantasy dream. They're not equivalent. Your ambition versus fantasy. Not equivalent. Not equivalent at all. I'm kind of bouncing around this, but Lucky does equate the two in that Lucky says his lifelong ambition was to see the edge of the galaxy, the edge of the universe, and I think it was the edge of the universe, not edge of the galaxy, he's decided to abandon that dream and replace it with fighting Dark Matter with the Kyuranger as his ambition and goal. Except, in this episode, like 2 scenes apart from each other, he says that, you are dead if you do not have a dream, if you have your dream taken from you, or if you abandon your dream, you are dead. 2 scenes before this, you just explained how you abandoned your dream and immediately replaced it with something else. Ergo, people having their dreams devoured, not so critical to their way of life as they can replace it with something else in their life to have an ambition to do. So, your Aesop is broken because of evidence in your own series of your main character doing exactly what he says other people can't do if they abandon their dreams. I hate this series. I seriously... It's so stupid! It wouldn't even be so bad if Lucky actually got his head knocked up the side of him and actually takes a minute to think about this kind of thing. You are encouraging someone to endanger themselves so they will die. Even after Raptor gets her powers, that is still a limitation. That is still something that can and will happen unless they directly contradict what was said in this episode about Raptor's state of being and how the damage that is inflicted to her will accumulate with time until she is no longer operational. You are encouraging her to kill herself. What is wrong with you? And of course, the episode phrases this. The episode shows Lucky as right to encourage her to do this. As after... It's just that they made the Kyutama appear out of nowhere again. Just straight up Deus Ex Machina, worse than the Nin Shuriken in Ninja. Because at least the Nin Shuriken were from an existing object they collected. I can't believe I'm defending Nin Ninja in this. Because... yeah, how the Nin Shuriken converted into their arsenal from the inert Shuriken every time was bullshit, because it said it was because they learned a lesson or had the resolve to do something, but in ways that completely contradicted what was actually happening in the episode. They're not even trying to pretend this time with their acquisitions. It appears because Raptor wishes really hard. I can't. I can't. The show used to be smarter than this. It seriously did. And hell, this runs against what I said last week about it would have been so much easier for them to already have found these Kyutama somewhere, someplace, and then have them one by one resonate with people that align to something they embody, and that have Raptor's resolve resonate with the last Kyutama that she wanted to be able to use to help everyone, and actually gone out of her way to prove herself to them that she would be able to help them beyond the way she has, and that allows her to resonate with it, wake her up, she achieves her dream. Instead, it's putting it in all these ways where any realistic person, aka the rest of the Kyuranger team, would say it's a bad idea as they don't want to see her hurt or die. And, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, they should have just had them have them and slowly activate them one by one over the series as the collective, Kyutama energy triggered more and more of them, so maybe have a secondary goal of the series to have all of them be active, and that would give them the power to resist dark matter. It would, again, kind of be similar to the Gokaiger Ranger keys, since it's now made pretty clear that they were kind of putting all of their backstory up front at the beginning of the series, and then just going from their first episode after that to rescuing Earth from all this. How do you fuck this up? How did we get here? I'm not going to be continuing with this series after the next episode. I'm really not. And Exide was ironically a very heavy palate cleanser for this, especially since this current arc is getting to Kuroto Dan's own dream of how he wants to become a god by creating Kamen Rider Chronicle, and it's a bit more fleshing out of what started him in his little madness. And so, again, it's kind of tying to the same thing of achieving your dream might not necessarily be a good thing for you. This episode kind of feels like we're dating some things, as it brings up the Bugster virus's origins as something that emerged from system data anomalies tied to Y2K. Y2K, if you're not familiar with the incident, is what was referred to, how should I phrase this? It was a programming error with computers back in the 90s where people realized that they had not encoded the dates correctly for registry in a computer systems. When they would go up, they'd only coded them from with 2 digits. So the abbreviations of a given year, 1998, 1999, and then it would roll over to 00. Now, the programming error was because the system had no way of registering date data correctly beyond 99. So what would happen in the theoretical test models was this would then reset the date codes to 1900. They would not register that the millennium had rolled over, and this would create a cascading series of system anomalies that would make a lot of computers no longer work in their entirety. And since so many things run off of computers, even in the 90s, this was a big concern for everybody to not have happen. What they ended up doing is doing a widespread and complete coverage of all computer systems to essentially patch this error, get the computer coding to register dates beyond those 2 digits. It's why you see most computers now have 20x in their date management systems, so they would not conflict with such a error in it. But apparently in the Kamen Rider universe, this created some type of system anomaly that amalgamated into a pseudo-sentient computer virus. Makes sense to me, since that's kind of how the whole Digimon thing and the Dark Lloyds in Mega Man and most of other Mega Man's other viruses, it works for me from this kind of setting for such. We don't know how it transitioned over into a biological virus. That's probably tied to things relating to Emu's backstory with his how he was experimented on, and all things tied to the last big crossover movie that hasn't gotten out on DVD yet, so we haven't gotten all the explicit details. But at least placed as a timeline for events, and ironically they put it back in 1999. This amuses me a lot because Kuga's origins, 1999. Skull's origins, aka the full beginning point for Kamen Rider Double's storyline, 1999. They keep doing this. And hey, I don't have much of an issue with 1999. It was a good... Personally, I found that to be a pretty good year, but... And it makes sense in the greater context of how they're speaking of the origins of this virus and how Kuroto discovered it as a kid and then became fascinated with it, and his fascination with this virus has made him want to use it to become a god of gaming by giving him dominion over gamers and players, and thus he would be the ultimate provider of entertainment, the ultimate thrill, and yeah, you're pretty much going the Garangi route with this, where they sought self-satisfaction through sociopathy, and I am totally on board with this. Yes. So, hey, we get some of why Kuroto is a malicious, magnificent bastard here, which, from how he's more cracking into his open insanity, he's losing much of his cool when Is it because of the setbacks he's experienced, or just simply because he's been getting closer to his goal and no longer has to hide how he feels from everyone? I'm not certain, but I'm liking him more from a villain perspective as things move on, as he's been further fleshed out, but I'm liking him as a character less as he's descending into the giggling madman, if that makes any sense to anyone. I think it's more, it seems to be I more like villains who can, I shouldn't say remain professional, but it's not overt insanity that's driving them to their eventual goals. I think that works. This is all exposition given to Emu as the Bugster of the Week manifests from a police detective who lost family members in the Zero Day incident, presumably killed by graphite or other bugsters directly instead of through infections. So he's after the truth to be able to set their memory to rest, and he thinks that Kuroto's father, Masamune, is responsible. Instead, we learn fully that Kuroto is behind the original incident and just directed all the blame at his father. His father is an innocent man who is in jail due to the madness of his son, and I like this further because it's continuing to sell pretty much what I said before. It's selling Kuroto as more of a magnificent bastard, where even when he loses, he wins. Zero Day was a setback for him, but he still got through it just fine. And I like how this detective also facilitates further bonding between Kagami and Emu, as well as it makes it doesn't show itself between their interactions. It's good to have someone whose story and drive parallels Kagami's. As I keep restating every week, the thing with Kagami and Saki are some of the absolute weakest parts of the lore for the show, because so many things hinge on that incident, but how they use the incident itself in the story is so weak. So it's good to see someone that parallels the struggle Kagami has with getting over that, and what drives him in his duties, but not showing how it's limiting to him, in that his decisions in how he limited himself in his interactions are his own way of dealing with it, and just because he's dealing with it that way doesn't make it the right way to go about it with his detachment, as you can't always be detached and impersonal even when you need to be. And Kagami has defaulted to that when he shouldn't need to. Yes, as I said, I'm doing this a couple hours after I originally watched the episode, so it's less fully in my mind, and things. Other relevant points to discuss. Taiga gets back his main Gashot, which isn't that big a thing, since he'll still be using Bang Bang simulation for the foreseeable future. But I really like the exchange he has with Parad in this episode, where they pretty much have a draw between them, which is entertaining for Parad because it's a challenge, and he's a gaming monster, of course, that he just sees it as something to overcome later. But he also voices that as much as he wants to be involved in Kamen Rider Chronicle, he is nonetheless wary of Kuroto in how he's trying to continuously cheat the system that the two factions have going between them, and how he's been collecting death data off of all of the rampant bugsters, which finally culminates in this episode from Dangerous Zombie from changing from level 10 to level X, an imaginary number or undefined concept, so he's no longer weaker than everything else in the series, as far as how it's being presented with his supremely strong power-up. And yeah, I like this. It's a different twist on the Lensman's arm race, where thus far he's been utterly immortal, but becoming more and more outclassed by everyone and thing around him. That he's taken this immortality from bug data and used it as a stepping stone for slowly evolving his own power is a good twist to this, and justifies how he just keeps coming back and seems less and less effective. Now he's a visible threat again, even though everybody is level 20, level 30, level 50, and he's no longer confined to a leveling system limitation. That's actually pretty clever and innovative for the whole thing. We know he's probably going to be becoming Kamen Rider Chrono sooner or later, once the Kamen Rider Chronicle project is done with. They have 3 more bugsters to manifest and die before he can do that, so 30s-ish, possibly? We don't know yet. So yeah, this is a good expectations-breaking episode with this further elaboration on all of these points, progressing character stories, and even setting up the next bits of the story arc and item collection as Taiga went to Genom Corp and its new head of development, whose name I forget. He was the one who created Bergamon. I am terrible with names. And actually, I like that they had him appear again directly after this, because it's good use of previous and recurring cast members to make use of this and facilitate the creation of the next Gashot for the series, which we know is going to be the maximum mighty Gashot that's going to give Emu his level 99 form. So, hey, that's another thing I like about this. They're setting up the next developments in the power line ahead of time, which contrasts how they just rushed every other one out the door in the early side. They're being patient with its story. The story is improving a lot because they now have the time to dedicate to all these things, and the story has become much better because of it. I need to be less irritated at bad pacing in Kamen Rider series at this point, as this is the second one that's done this. I'm not counting Ghost, I'm counting about Drive's bad pacing, and in hindsight, a lot of that pacing issue does come from how the first arc of the series is crowded by the expectations of you need to get to this point before the winter movie, which then has some type of special power-up factor into it. So yeah, another good episode of X-Side. I'm glad that it's lost its early problems, and I'm hoping they can keep up the pace with that. Zero Dragon Blood. I gotta admit, this is the first episode I liked in a few episodes. Like, pretty much since Alice started doing stupid things, and while Alice still does stupid things in here, it's not so much showing her as right and how she has stolen the dragon egg and thus continued the potential of the threat, but they're showing that the dragon baby is nonetheless innocent in this form, so however dangerous it might be, yeah, you probably shouldn't be outright just going around killing babies. And they do show that it's likely any influence from Adele that would likely turn it evil, but this is still nonetheless concerning, as this thing was shown to be massively powerful. Like, it wiped out the remnants of a horror that Rei was fighting that was previously overwhelming him with absolutely zero effort at all. And this is a just hatched baby. Who knows how strong the actual fully grown dragon is? This could be a threat on par with or surpassing Messiah if it's allowed to fully develop. And that more than justifies the Makai Senate's fear of the dragon hatching and being allowed to potentially fall into Adele's hands. As, spoilers, Adele's not dead. Like, we were pretty certain of that beforehand. So, in this case, it's showing that neither sides were fully right on this. Alice's right is in that the dragon baby is innocent, and it's kind of imprinted onto Alice as its mother, and, that was kind of the theme of this episode, showing that it's an adorable little baby dragon. But still proving that the Senate's danger of what it could become if it fell into the wrong hands would more than validate them wanting to destroy it if they couldn't keep it sealed. And since Alice failed on the part of that where they could just keep it sealed forever because she let it out of the cage, they were left with the only other option to be to kill it, and simply just to keep it away from the potential of abuse, which is true. But now that it's born, and that's a completely different issue, as now you have this thing, how should I phrase this without having this backfire on me later when I actually get to the whole Amazons thing, which has a similar debate in it. It's not inherently evil. It could become a threat at some point if it fell into the wrong hands. Amazons, of course, has the other parallel thing of it's only a matter of time before the titular Amazons go crazy and attack people. So, okay, not so much the same, but the threat still comes from the most likely person to get their hands on it to already have been corrupted in the past, and that influencing the dragon to fully be evil and not wanting to go to have that danger when they're already not so much losing the war, but they're only just holding back the tide. It could be a potential asset. It could moreoverly be a ruthless weapon that harms more people. The Senate are not exactly morally the moral bright spots in this, regardless, even though they are humanity's protectors, but sometimes you gotta do horrible things to keep people safe. I'm trying to rationalize the Senate in this, aren't I? So, I still think Alice's actions are stupid and being intentionally ignorant to the reality of the dangers around them. But on the other hand, now that I've seen more of the dragon baby, I'm not exactly chomping at the bit to see it die, because it is a tiny ball of adorableness. Yes.